there's a huge precedent in the football world, that females should coach females and males should coach males. And I'm like, no, man, I want to like be the one to be the first coach in the PSL, or I want to be the one that wants to be the first female in whatever level, just to break those barriers and just be like, it's possible. And I think we put ourselves, and I kind of was like that at first. I was like, okay, put yourself in a box. You can only coach in, as I say, I'm all for the women's game, love the women's game. They need so much more emphasis on the women's game, but sometimes we shut ourselves off and think we can't go into the men's game, but you can.
Well, here we are again on the Whistle podcast, and today we have a special guest and making waves in the land of ladies football, Miss Kaitlin Hunt, the daughter of Mr. Gavin Hunt, who so kindly put me in touch with you, Kaitlin. I had to ask you for permission. I had to go to him. Very respectful message. I know he's in pre-season and he said, please, Courtney, don't worry me. But he kindly put us in contact with you. Kaitlin Hunt, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. I was quite mind blown. I was like, you were asking him for my number. I was like, wow, cheapers. Well, times have changed. It used to be the other way around. People used to ask me for his number.
No.
He says to me, no, I can't keep up now. Everyone's asking me for your number. I'm like, yo, sorry, Dad. It's terrible.
And rightfully so. And especially with some of the things you are doing currently in football, and some of the other ladies doing some exceptional things in, like you got Casey Oliver, Caitlin Swart, Simpiwe, who's doing things with the national team. And then obviously we have Desiree, who is who has been a guest on our show, who is fantastic at what she's doing with the national team. Kaitlin, how did you get involved in this?
Sure. Yeah, I feel like it's people think it's like this extraordinary story of my dad and us, but it's actually not. It's just, I think I put it down to a lot of that. Like, we grew up on a football field. I think, since I always say kids, we used to like spend time on the playground and stuff like that. We used to spend time on a football pitch. I said from when I was young, we used to go to training sessions. I mean, we've traveled with my dad everywhere he's gone. And there was always that like, okay, this could be interesting and this could maybe be a part, but there was never any pressure to go into it. I mean, I've always reiterated to people, there was never like, you must go into football, you must be involved in football. It kind of just, the path found me naturally. As I said, I studied sports science and biokinetics, but I found a love through football. As I said, I had many injuries and I went through quite a bit, and I just found myself in football. And it's a nice story, and it's kind of found me naturally. There was never any pressure. So that's the nicest part of everything is, through my mom's background and my dad's background, there was always that encouragement, but there was never any pressure to do it.
When you talk about pathways, and everybody just feels that sometimes to get along the pathway is an easy puzzle piece. You just put things together, someone will talk your way into it. But you spoke about your sports science that you're actually involved in, right? You've also got parts of your CAF qualification, which we'd like to touch on. But just for the listeners, especially young girls out there who will also be looking at yourself as a trailblazer trying to get into this field, just talk about you getting into the sports science. How many years of studying is that? Then your CAF qualification. It doesn't just come easily.
No, it doesn't. And I've always been such a big advocate for education. I've always said, if you're educated and, you go through qualifications, people can't really question you too much. So I always was, I always wanted to study. I always wanted to go to university. I never wanted to just make my way in this industry through the name or what other people have done. So that's why I studied 3 years of sports science. I went to UWC. It was a fantastic university. I'm such a huge advocate for UWC, and especially their sports. I mean, the football at the moment has been fantastic, what they're doing on the women's side. I mean, with Coach Tina and them qualifying for COSAFA, it's been amazing. So yeah, I did 3 years of sports science there. And then I kind of was like, I want to further my studying. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got injured. I got 2 bad ACL injuries through playing hockey. And then there was a love for rehab, and I enjoyed rehab so much. People find it so strange. Like, how can you enjoy rehab and injuries? And giving that back to players was what I thoroughly enjoyed. So that's when I went into biokinetics, and I enjoyed that side of the game and, understanding injuries and return to play and, how players can get there. So that took me another year. And then I did my internship. I came back to Joburg and I studied at the Wits Sports Center, which was so eye-opening. I saw so many injuries and I learned so much in that year. And then I kind of, through this whole process, was like, football is where I want to be. And it's weird because people think, like, as I say, there was that pressure to go into football, or that's what I was told to do, but I kind of found it naturally. As I said, I never got to play the game myself. I was like, had a go at my dad for that. I was like, you never let us play football. But, during that time, women's football wasn't really established. I mean, I'm talking about like 6, 7, 8 years ago. There wasn't many academies. There wasn't much around. Soccer wasn't offered at the school I went to, so I never got to play the game. So I kind of felt like now I can give back to the game in a different way, whether it's conditioning or rehab or injuries. That's when I felt like, okay, this is my calling, and I can give back to the game, more so the women's game. So yeah, that's why I find myself with my studying.
You start to forge your way into football more. Now you go out and do the CAF license. Now, just for somebody who's never done a license, who's never actually gone through this process, what does the process entail?
Yeah, so I've always been in my degree, I've always said you can't be like a general sports scientist. You can't be a general bioclinics. You can't just be, yes, if you want to work in private practice, it's up to you. But, if you want to make your way in a sport, you've got to be very sport specific. You can't just be a rugby, a cricket, a football, sports scientist. You've got to be specific to the sport that you do. So I said, I said it out from the beginning that football was my sport, but I just said, I have my own knowledge from my dad's side and my mom's side and how I grew up. But I said, that's not enough. I want to get further my education in the game. As I said, I've never really coached the game. I've only been on the sidelines and never really coached the game. I understand the fundamentals of the game quite well. So that's when I was like, I want to do a coaching license. And obviously this came with like a lot of shock and a lot of like, oh, now you want to coach. But coaching, I've always had a love for coaching. I've coached many different sports. I've coached tennis, hockey, I've coached lots of sports, and I've got done into the soccer a little bit. So I was like, I can't just coach off my experience. I have to coach off my, getting a qualification. So then I went through South Ekurhuleni in Joburg because this is where I was based. And, they've done this fantastic thing of, especially through the C license, they're empowering women a lot more. So I did my D license, which I'm not going to lie to you, this coaching license is not easy. People think it's a walk in the park. People think, it's just like you go there for a few days and you're coaching license and you're done. But it wasn't easy. So I went through my D license and I took a year after that. And then Hollywood Bets came up with this idea of, sending 30 female coaches on a C license. And I was so fortunate enough to be selected to be one of those coaches. So I just graduated a few months ago, and it was fantastic. I mean, majority was female coaches, and it was really female driven.
I saw the presentation.
Yes.
I watched it on Twitter, and that's when I got shocked, and I saw you, and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't be going into coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what people also found confusing as well. As I said, I set out to do the coaching licenses to help myself with the strength and conditioning side. So I was like, I want to understand the coach's perspective more. I want to understand the tactical game, the fundamentals of each position. I just wanted to understand the game a bit better from studying point of view. As I know it from my background, but I didn't want to just go that type of knowledge. So that's when I was like, people kind of got the wrong impression. They were like, oh, no, I want to be a coach. As I said, coaching was never part of my plan. It was never something that I set out to do from the beginning. And I think, especially in South Africa, you can't earn a living just off coaching. And you have coaches nowadays who are working full-time jobs from 9 to 5, and then they go in the evening and coach their team from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. You can't, unless you're at top level, whether it's the PSL or the NFD, you can't make a living off coaching. So I've always said I wanted to study and do the strength and conditioning, but I wanted to do the coaching licenses to help me with that. As I said, I've never counted coaching out, and I've always said to myself, coaching will be there one day. But I think in this country, and especially if you're a female, you have to have a B license, an A license. And I also said to myself, I didn't want to stop at a C. I have huge aspirations to go on a B license, to go on an A license, to coach, to get the highest level of qualification. And if that leads me into coaching, then so be it. But I do have the added advantage of the strength and conditioning and the bio and the rehab and all of that stuff. So I'm kind of just playing with it at the moment and see where it's taking me. But yeah, it was a fantastic initiative to see a company like Hollywood Bets wanting to drive women's coaching. I mean, I've never ever heard of a corporate company, from my knowledge, wanting to put so much into coaching, especially females. I mean, it was fantastic. The whole thing was sponsored. We went on it. And I mean, I know Hollywood Bets have aspirations for it to go further, put them on the B license, put them on the A license. We want to see this project through. You don't want to just have someone have a C license and they stop. And I think the most important thing with this now is, to actually coach, to actually apply what you've learned, be on the field, give back. So yeah, it's fantastic, and a long way to continue. I still think there's a long way to go for females, but we can't just sit around and think that things are going to happen. We've got to make it happen. So we've got to put ourselves in these licenses, be in the presence of men, and do what men do.
At this point in time, what do you see yourself as? Do you see yourself as progressing to a head coach, or do you see yourself as, with your skills and with the background work that you qualifications that you have, that a lot of other coaches may not have, the biokinetics? Do you see yourself as part of an entourage of a coaching team, or are you pushing towards head coach in the future? What is your...
Yeah. So I would love to, as I said, for now, my aspirations, I would love to be part of a professional setup. And would be more inclined to be part of a female setup. As I said, I've never been against, I don't think sometimes we put ourselves like men can only work in the men's game and females can only work in the female game, where I don't think that's necessarily right. I think it can be the other way. Females can work in the men game, men can work in the female games. I mean, we see a lot of head coaches nowadays that are male. So I just think I've always been inclined to, I want to work at the top level, which is in this country would be the PSL, would be the Hollywood Bets for the women's league. So yeah, I would like to be part of a technical team. I just think a head coach it's a big role, and it's something that you need a lot of experience in. It needs to grab you basically. So you need to go with that. And right now it's there, but it's not my full focus. As I say, I'm going with strength and conditioning at the moment, and I think the coaching has really, really helped me. But I definitely don't want to just stop with the coaching licenses. I think the coaching licenses are so valuable. You learn so much about the game. And I mean, I went on the C license and I was like, sure, I'm out here doing practical sessions on a field. And, I think I had a topic of wing play, and I was like, sure, this is just it's like a totally different game that I'm entering. So, and I put my hand up, and I'll say that I'm don't have all the coaching experience in the world, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to put myself out there. And if it puts me in a head coaching position, then so be it. But if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And if it puts me in a strength and conditioning role where I can work under a head coach and learn, more than happy to do that. I'm such a huge advocate for engaging with technical team members. We can't work as individuals. We have an analyst, you have a sports scientist, you have a physio, you have a head coach, you have all these different roles, and each one can bring so much information which can help the next one. So yeah, wherever it takes me, it takes me. So I'm just kind of keeping both doors open at the moment.
Kaitlin, I'm just listening to you and I'm just laughing because, you're talking about the entourage of what a professional setup has, the bioconnectors, the strength and conditioning coaches and all that. When I played football, we just had the coach. We had nobody else. He was the one person.
Yeah, it's times have changed so much now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think it's working in our favor. And especially I think in terms of the youth and the women's game, there's a lot more like with the women's body, and there's a lot more that goes behind it that needs skilled professionals. I mean, I still remember like from my dad's day and that I think there was like a head coach, an assistant coach, or a goalkeeping coach if you were lucky. There wasn't a fitness coach, there wasn't a physio, never had all these luxuries as they want to call them. But I think nowadays players get paid a lot of money and their bodies are their tools, and you need to look after them. They need to be around skilled professionals who know what they're talking about. And if you're a head coach, you can't always necessarily fulfill three roles. That's why you have a goalkeeping coach, that's why you have a analyst, that's why you have a strength and conditioning coach. You have people like that who can help you on your job. Sometimes I think we feel like we need to do everything, and fortunately sometimes we're not in a position where we have the financial means to have all those people part of our technical team. Obviously, at the highest level, we are blessed with each position. But I mean, at the lowest level, you got to just fill in where you need it. Whether it's the kit or the warming up or the whatever, you just got to help where you need it. But times have changed so much, and I think they will continue to change. I think technical teams will, and we've seen it nowadays. I mean, in the PSL, some of the technical teams are frightening. It's scary. There's more technical team members than there are like players. Traveling with a team of 30 technical team members and 25 players or 20 players, times have changed, but I don't think all the clubs have that luxury of 10, 15 plus members. Not every club, obviously at your higher clubs, you have that luxury, but it's a good way. It's a good way forward. I think it's needed. We study and we have these skill sets, and I think there's skilled people out there, and roles are becoming much more defined now. I think in the old days, like head coaches had many roles, but roles are more defined now.
Now, when you talk, I like the word you used earlier. You just said the word, this is needed, which is fantastic. I think it is needed because you form part of this group of people that are also looking after the well-being of the as you said, the assets of this company that, their bodies are their tools. What do you specifically feel that you yourself, thinking of your bag of qualifications at the moment, what could you bring to a setup that could enhance performance?
Yeah. So I've always said, and I say this with the utmost respect to people, through all that I've done, I've always said I felt like I had an added advantage through the background that I got brought up in. Obviously, from my dad's side, he was coaching, and then from my mom's side, obviously, her dad was Budgie Byrne. We all know that. Like, we've grown up in this football family where my mom's brothers played football, my dad played football, he coached. We've just grown up around football. And people say to me, like, do you ever get sick of football? And I'm like, I don't, because this is all I know. People say to me, do you watch rugby? And I'm like, with all due respect to rugby in this country, I don't want, I just watch football, So I say to people,
Kaitlin, are you telling me you're not watching rugby at the moment? Come on.
I do watch the rugby, but I'm not like, I'm still trying to figure things out. I'm still trying to understand the rules, how it works. As I say, I'm such a huge admirer for what Russie and the rugby, their structures and their whole setup has been. I mean, we could talk about it for hours. It is fantastic what he's done from the grassroots all the way up. It's been brilliant. So yeah, but back to the topic, as I say, I always felt like I had that added advantage because I grew up in a football family, and we've said it often, like I can understand the dressing room, I can understand the lingo, I can understand what a coach is saying, and I've also said like sometimes nowadays you get staff members or like say physios or strength and conditioning coaches who are not really football specific. They don't know football to the point of, I'm not saying you need to know how to coach the game. That's why I've always encouraged that technical team members should do coaching licenses, whether it's a basic entry-level coaching license, your physio, your sports scientist, you should go do a D license, go do an entry-level license, understand from a coach's point of view, how things work, and vice versa. So from a coaching point of view, go maybe get a bit of better understanding of the body and the strength and conditioning and so on and so forth. So we all get a better understanding. So yeah, I've always said I felt like I had that added advantage because I grew up in a football environment and I understood the dressing room, I understood the lingo, I understood how coaches react. I mean, we used to come home some days and my dad just used to lose a game and we just all like run away. We used to shut ourselves in our room, and you kind of need to understand the emotions, the feelings, what it means, what's at stake here. It's people's jobs, it's people's livelihoods, it's people's, it's your life. So, that's when I felt like that's what I could add to a technical team with obviously what I've studied, what I've learned, what I've gained. But as I said, some people, they walk into a dressing room and they go, sure, like, is this what a dressing room is like? Is this how a coach talks or acts? And if you've been around a few coaches and you understand how the game works, I think it gives you a little bit of an added advantage in the game.
I'm going to put you on the spot now, Kaitlin. I shared something with you just the other day. Something popped up from the new USA coach, Miss Emma Hayes, who firstly was a fantastic coach in the women's PSL here in the United Kingdom. And I'm going to read it out to people. So she tweeted something. You can find a female pilot, a female doctor, a female lawyer, a female banker, but you can't find a female coach working in the men's game, leading men. It just shows how much work there still needs to be done. Give me your thoughts on that tweet, please.
Sure. When you sent it to me,
feelings on that tweet?
Yeah, and literally as you read it now, I just got goosebumps. And even when you sent it to me, I just get goosebumps when this type of stuff. We're still in a time where I was reading a tweet last night where, there was a female player and her and her boyfriend both play for Juventus and they both earn different salaries. And we're still in a time where this stuff happens. But yeah, back to that tweet, I've always said in life, and I think as we've got older, it's got worse, but you now get labeled with your profession by your gender. So people say you're a female physio or you're a female this or you're a female. Why can't I just be like a sports scientist? Why can't I just be a pilot? Why can't I just be do you know what I mean? Why must I now be labeled by gender in front of my position? So I've always said if we were to sit in a room with people and we all just say, okay, we're all physiotherapists or we're all sports scientists or we're all coaches, do you know what I mean? Your gender doesn't come into it. So I think in the corporate world, if we want to say that, roles are different now. Females are getting higher roles and whatever, but it's not so per se that it's gender specific. Where I think sports has become so, they've separated sports by gender now. So females and males, and yes, I know the games are different and things have evolved, and the men's game may be more advanced and the females' game not so much. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But I think you have to prove yourself so much more as a female than if you were a male, and I just think especially in the females game, as I said earlier, like they've always said females should coach females and males should coach males. And that's just like the president. That's just how it should be. But it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, Emma Hayes has come in and she's like, it's amazing what she's done. I mean, she's gone from the English Premier League, now she's gone over to America, coaching in different leagues and different regions. It's different. But even at her level, I mean, she has to prove so much already. But she's done so much in the women's game. And people say, oh, but could she coach a men's team? And I do think the games are different. There's different demands of the game, females being around males. There's always these things that come up as well. But I do think nowadays you are put into a box of your profession, your gender comes first before your profession does. And it shouldn't be that way. as I said, when we get a position, it's like you're just a strength and conditioning coach. Why must you be a female strength and conditioning coach? What does your gender change from your qualification? So I think we're still in a time where there needs to be a lot of shift towards that, especially in sport. I think in the normal world, if you want to call it that, the corporate kind of world, people don't really look at it that like too much. It's not really, but in sport, there's a big stamp on females and males, and you've seen it across all sport, whether it's tennis, golf, whatever. You see all the different sports. You've seen it, but especially there's a huge precedent in the football world. That females should coach females and males should coach males, and I'm like, no, man. I want to like be the one to be the first coach in the PSL, or I want to be the one that wants to be the first female in whatever level. Just to break those barriers and just be like, it's possible. And I think we put ourselves, and I kind of was like that at first. I was like, okay, put yourself in a box. You can only coach in, as I say, I'm all for the women's game, love the women's game. They need so much more emphasis on the women's game, but sometimes we shut ourselves off and think we can't go into the men's game. But you can. There's so much space for females to go into the men's game. So as I said, there's a lot of work. And I still correct people to this day and just say, you're a coach. You're not a female coach. You're a coach. You're not a sports scientist. You're not a female sports scientist. So there's a lot of shift that needs to be done. And, people like Emma Hayes and and I just love her. She's so unspoken about it. She speaks so much on these topics that are like taboo almost, like you can't speak about it. But she's so willing to open these discussions up and open these topics that are genuine conversations. I mean, we're not talking about like, oh, she's just saying it because she wants a job, because she's worked at the highest level, hasn't she? She's worked at Chelsea and she's won trophies. She's now the national team. She's worked at the highest level. She doesn't have to say that, does she? But she's still fighting for the ones that are still coming up behind her and wanting to do well. So let's see. I just pray every day there's a shift. The shift in mentality needs to happen.
Do you think, firstly, thank you for that. I love the answer. I really do. The answer has got me thinking about something else, because it's actually got me thinking about my daughter. My daughter's 13 years old. She plays rugby, but my daughter's a male coach. That's become an issue at all. Do you think that, because even if you look at coaching in the WSL and other games, for some ladies teams, you may have a male coach. That's never an issue. Or do you? I don't know why it's
that's what baffles. That's what baffles me a bit. And on that topic, I think that there's a lot of like, and that's what I love nowadays. Is there's so many girls and young girls that are going into cricket, rugby, football. I mean, football, as I said, when I went to school, it wasn't a sport. You couldn't do it. Basketball, all these sports weren't an option. And I think what schools are doing nowadays is fantastic to open up different channels. Gone are the days of you only do tennis and you only do hockey and swimming. Now we're opening up so many different channels for kids to express themselves and to play different sports. So from that point of view, it's fantastic. But it just baffles me how even in South Africa here, you see it in the Hollywood bets, it's the highest level of women's football. And I think majority of the coaches are male, but no one says anything. I mean, take the Sundowns coach, Jerry Shabalala. He's a male, but no one has ever questioned it. No one's ever said, "Paul, this is strange." Even in your case, you didn't go there and say, "Okay, why is there a male coach coaching my daughter?" But if it had to be the other way around, I mean, we all remember the Jose Mourinho saga with the physiotherapist. I mean, that was why is there a female? Okay, there were other factors and whatever, but why is it now such a huge shock when it's roles are reversed, when it's the other way around? Because when I went to tennis or hockey and we had a male coach, cool, we just got on with the day, it's normal, But now, if we're starting to put women in the females game, people turn heads and they go, oh, well, she's just there because she did XXX, or she's not there because she should be there, or she's qualified. But it's so backward way of thinking. As I said, I've never been opposed to males coaching females or the other way around. I've never been opposed to it. As I say, I would love to see more female coaches in the game and more female technical members. I mean, sometimes you see a female goalkeeping coach, or you see a female team manager, whatever. And that's fantastic. It's a female in a female game, which is good. I've always said females drive females. So, but it's an interesting topic because men, if they're coaching females, we don't get questioned about it. It's kind of seen as the norm.
Yeah, very true. Because of your work you're doing, let's come back to your work and your daily, I would say, nuts and bolts of what you do. Thinking about getting athletes prepared for games, what would be the advice? So somebody's listening to this. I'm a young athlete. I'm a young footballer. I want to get involved. I want to give myself the best version of myself on game day.
Yeah.
2 weeks preparation that you'd be advising young athletes to condition themselves in order to be ready for game day?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough. I work at it's so funny now that I like work with boys. I work at an academy level, and it's a boys' academy. It's a boys' football academy, and I'm a female. I'm the only female staff member in the whole technical team. There's not one female that works in that team except me. So that also for me is it's a struggle on its own. It's not hard, it's not easy. There's a daily struggle of this and this and this. So it's not easy, but I do think in today's times, kids are getting exposed to things, and I'm sure in the UK it's much more advanced than here. Kids are getting exposed to things a lot sooner. So things like the gym, like activation, injury prevention, rehab, all of this stuff. I mean, when I went to school, and even in my dad's day, if they got injured, you were done. Like that was the end. You never saw a field again. Where kids nowadays have the opportunity of learning about recovery and the diets. And I mean, these kids are 13 and 12. And I was like, when I was 13 and 12, I don't think I ever stepped foot in a gym. I just went to go play. So I just think for kids nowadays, they're exposed to so much more, and they've got to grab things. So when kids are 13 and 12 and they're going to make it to professional level, it's not a shock to them. They walk in there and they're like, oh, what's activation? Oh, I don't know what activation is. Oh, what's recovery? I don't know. Where they've done it from 12. They know what it's like. They've been through a process. We're almost preparing them for the future. But unfortunately, not every academy and not every kid maybe in South Africa has that opportunity of having a strength and conditioning coach and having that one-on-one time with someone who's willing to invest and put time into you and give you the hours. So yeah, for us, the weeks are different. It depends on the age groups, what we have, but what we do is at our academy is we train 5 days a week and they get 2 gym sessions. So we are very big on the gym sessions. We've enforced it. We actually want to look to do more of them, because sometimes yes, training is important, but there's the off the field stuff that we don't look at as well, whether it's the gym, strengthening, injury prevention, all of that stuff. It's massive. So for us, a normal week is, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just we gym and we go home. We do a lot of sports psychology as well. We're talking about kids that are 14. We're doing sports psychology with them. We're doing video analysis with them. We're learning about activation before training. You don't just walk on a pitch at 2 and go train. It doesn't work like that.
Are you saying to me with 14-year-olds, you're doing video analysis with them as well? Wow.
Yeah. So at the academy we've just invested in a VO. So I'm sure you've seen the green VO. Everyone knows the green VO, the triangle camera.
No, listen, I haven't seen it. Tell me.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've always through the contact time we have with the kids, obviously they go to school in the morning and then they gym and train in the afternoon with us. So we've got this, they're in a football environment where they're training 5 days a week, they're gymming, there's all this stuff. So we really want to maximize the time that we get with them. The contact time with these kids it's crazy. I said, we spend more time with them than their parents do. We get to know these kids so well. So yeah, about 3-4 months ago, they invested in a video camera, put it up in the game. It's like IT and everything. So, and then every once a week we sit with them and, well, not me, but depending on who the person is, they will do video analysis with them. And, they'll talk about points, the bigger picture, the smaller picture, what's the medium view, what do we think, what could you have done better? And it's just like, you can see, I've always said people learn differently in football, whether you're sitting on a field, you're moving cones. Some kids want to see themselves. Some kids want to go, okay, now I can see myself. Now I can see how I move. But I mean, what baffles me as well is we're doing that at the academy level, and then some clubs in the PSL don't do video analysis, don't do this type of stuff. So that's just the different ends of things. So yeah, at the academy, I had a normal week for us, but there's gym sessions, there's training sessions, we're doing video analysis, we're doing sports psychology. I mean, we did a session the other day, and you really get kids thinking about things. It's not just walking on a field and you put your boots on and you play. There's so much more that goes into it, what you can control, can't control, your home environment, things like that. So we're really trying to give the kids everything that we can. As I said, the contact time we have with them is unbelievable. So as I said, I'm trying to expose them to different models, whether it's activation before training. You don't just walk on a field at 2 and you train. You need to do cycling, stretching, foam rolling. You need to do these things. Then when you come off the field, then you got to go home and do recovery. And they look at you like, oh, I just go home and watch TV. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. Train tomorrow. And we're talking about 13, 14-year-olds, and they're like, oh man, give us a break. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work this way. So,
this is how you develop the professional culture. This is where people don't see this as a part-time sport anymore. People take it away from a sport. Now it's a job.
That's what we're trying to replicate. As I said, we're trying to nowadays there's so many sports academies of different sports, and obviously we're football, but we're trying to replicate what a professional environment would look like. I think in South Africa, kids are getting exposed to professional environments a lot later. So not later, but only when they're 15 and they're at a national team level, then they get exposed to it, whether they should have been exposed to it at 12, 13. We're in that growth phase of what they're going through in their life. So as I said, if we can try and replicate as much as we can to them of a professional environment, so be it, and we try and treat them like professionals, if you want to call it that. Like, this is what your average day would look like. From 8, you come in, you leave at 5, and this is what your day looks like. So if we can help them with our players, and I mean, if we make a difference in one person's life, then we've done our job, So as I said, we have our expertise and we are doing what we're doing, but it's hard, you're working with teenage boys. It's not easy. People think you work with kids every day and it's a walk in the park and you joke and you laugh, but it's not. It's emotions, feelings, selections, growth, with the different maturities. He's reached 18, he's only 14. What is he going through? There's all these different factors that we don't think about. So yeah, if we can replicate the professional environment as much as possible, we've done our job.
Kaitlin Hunt, you've been generous with your time. You've been generous with allowing us to make contact with you. We wish you all the best for the future. We hope that you continue to make the strides in football that you deserve and the ladies' game deserves and the game deserves for itself. Thank you once again for making time to talk to us.
No, thank you for having me. And I just, one day this needs to be a different conversation. You know what I mean? We can't be talking about women in football and us not getting what we want. And as I say, with time and people like us, we're going to drive it and we'll change it. And I've set out for myself, to make as much of a difference as I can. And I think it will happen one day.